On this episode of This is Game Boy Lite, Sashu Wagyu Yonken Pon. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of This is Game Boy Lite, episode 44. I am eBloodyCandy, and today we will be discussing a fairly unknown game from a fairly unknown anime called Yonkaman. But before we dive into that, just a quick update of what I have been up to, and believe me, it will be quick. I have finished Metroid Dread, finally. It took me like a month and a half to actually play through it because I have been so incredibly busy with Haunt Hunters, real life, the podcast, and just personal projects. It literally took me from my second day of playing to my third day of playing was a month in between then. So it's a relatively short game. It took me 7.5 hours to beat in total, but it took me a month and a half to play that 7.5 hours. So Metroid Dread is done, and it's a game. If you are at all curious about what my thoughts are of Metroid and Metroid Dread, that playthrough is up on my YouTube. Otherwise, I have played through Fortified Zone 1, or Fortified Zone if you play the American Game Boy stuff, and this was in preparation for our Fortified Zone series podcast episode coming up. I was a lot more familiar with Fortified Zone 2 than I was with 1, so I wanted to replay through 1 to refamiliarize myself with the game, and basically combat Mo about how awesome these games are. And yeah, other things I've been up to, like I said, a lot of just personal stuff, Haunt Hunter stuff. Mo played, I spectated Pony Island for Haunt Hunters. I'm getting ready to ramp up some Assassin's Creed stuff here soon, probably within the next couple of days. We had the RGL horror marathon or Halloween marathon where I played Dedius and Where Is My Body from Green Boy Games. And then I submitted 5 games to RGL's Feed the Children marathon, which will be happening over Thanksgiving weekend. More about that in the closing segments that we script so well. So, just been busy. Lots and lots of projects. Just very, very, very busy. So not too many games, but a lot of back-end stuff that hopefully by the end of this month will be lightened up because of preparations on Glenn and my side. And I will be allowed to enjoy my life in December. So yeah, with that, we're going to dive right into Yonkaman after this very short break. Okay, welcome back everybody. Yonkaman, like I said, this is a game not many people have probably heard of, unless you were, from Japan. Yonkaman, the Game Boy video game, was released December 27th of 1991, and it was published by Masaya, or better known as NCS. If you're unfamiliar with NCS games, that's fine. I'm very unfamiliar with NCS games. Some games you may have heard of from them: Prince of Persia, both Game Boy, Super Nintendo, Ranma Half Hard Battle, Battletoads for the Game Boy. If you're really into Japanese stuff, Zenippo Pro Wrestling Jet was also from them. Otherwise, they have made a ton of games up until 1999, or at least published a ton of games up until 1999. But many of them are Japanese only. So, not a super well-known publisher. I don't even think we've had a Masaya game yet on the podcast, so it's actually pretty interesting. We could assume that Masaya also did the development as well too. There was no credits associated with the development that I could find of this game. Nor was there any composer credits that I could find for this game as well, simply because I can't read Japanese. But I do know the genre. It is an action platformer. So we do have that coming for us. So we'll dive into the plot of the Game Boy game here real quick. So the plot is the mask Osodashi had kidnapped Yonkaman's friends, and it's up to Yonkaman to save them by challenging him to a game of Janken. That is the premise of the video game. But before we can dive into the gameplay and to better explain the mystery behind that plot, what we really need to do is dive into the anime. So to really better understand why the game it is the way that it is and why it even exists, we have to look back to April of 1991, where Tetsuya Endo, I know you've all heard the name before. He's probably better known for his roles with One Piece and Bleach. Directed an anime called Yonkaman. Oddly enough, a lot of the voice actors in Yonkaman went on to do some pretty big roles in both video game voice acting and in anime voice acting. In April of I already went through that. Each episode ran about 30 minutes long, and it ran for 51 episodes. So this was about a year's worth of an anime. Basically, in Western terms, one season. The gist of the anime is there's a small village called Yonkan Town, and the hero Yonkan Man protects the village and defeats his adversaries by playing games of rock, paper, scissors with them. Meanwhile, the villain Osodashi Mask always tries to deceive others. Yonkan Man tries to have justice brought to those that need it and faces off against Osodashi by gathering all of the Yonkan energy into his Yonkan stick and having a Yonkan battle at the end. So if y'all haven't figured out yet, Janken is rock, paper, scissors. So now that we kind of have a premise of what Yonkaman anime is, let's get into the actual gameplay. We'll actually start tying the gameplay in with the anime as well too as we start to go through this. The gameplay is very, very basic. You use left and right on the D-pad to move. You press A and B to jump, and start pauses and unpauses the game. Exceptionally basic controls. Throughout the game, throughout the stages that you play, you will come across a various amount of items. Most of them are food or fruits, as is pretty popular in older Japanese games. You'll come across an item that looks like a boot or a rollerblade. This gives you points. Points are okay. They're a thing. I believe they give you extra lives once you hit a certain amount of them. But we'll get into why you really don't need that in a minute. But the boot also gives you a speed boost through the stage, which is actually going to be pretty useful later on. You get a fist, which will grant you points as well. Everything grants you points, but the fist will grant you plus 300 seconds. This is important, and we will need to remember this in the next few points afterwards. Then you have a palm, an orange, a cherry, a lemon, an apple, which I'll just give you points. Then you have a pear, which gives you a lot of points, but it takes away 200 seconds off of your timer. And then you have a heart that gives you a bunch of points as well, too. So I've talked about these seconds, right? A fist gives you 300 seconds. A pear takes away 200 seconds. Why is this important? Well, you have 1,500 seconds to complete a stage. If you do not complete the stage in time, you lose. You die. You fall over. You go back to the main menu. There are 4 stages in Yonkaman, plus a hidden stage. So once you get to the title screen, press start, you are greeted with 4 selectable stages and one you can tell it's going to be a stage because there's an empty slot, a visible empty slot there, but it's not active for you to select. You can choose any of the 4 stages in any order as you see fit, and the 4 stages are based off of your 4 friends from the anime. I'm not going to try to pronounce their names. They're pretty tough for me to do. So, one big issue with the game when it comes to stage select is if you choose the quote-unquote first stage or the top stage and you beat it, it doesn't deactivate itself. It puts a flag up saying that you beat it, but it doesn't deactivate itself. So you can actually go back into stage 1 again and beat it again for no rhyme or reason whatsoever. And when you beat a stage and it takes you back to the main screen again, it doesn't move the cursor down to the next stage. It keeps it on the stage that you just completed. So you can't just go mashing A to get out of it. Now let's talk about each stage. Each stage is exceptionally linear. It's a very left to right action platformer that has obviously various obstacles in the way of Yonkaman, such as fruit, which we just talked about, the items, and what I would like to call frenemies. So the quote unquote enemies that you encounter in the stage are not random objects. So when you're playing through the game, you're going to come across like bouncing tomatoes and shoes and like it. You would think is just complete random nonsense being thrown at you in this video game, when actually it isn't. There is actually a reason all of this exists. Those random objects are actual background characters in the anime. In the anime, there is no real human form. Yonkaman is the closest thing to a human form in the anime. So as you're playing through the game, like I say, you're gonna come across like tomatoes and pencils and stuff like that. These are all background characters of the actual anime. They're drawn out in a humanoid sense in the anime, but not so much in the video game itself, which is why there's a big disconnect and why you may think that there's some random things in the way because they needed to make a game. But the background characters in the anime are usually playing Janken, and that is how Yonkaman gathers the Janken power to power his Janken stick. So there is a reason why those things are there. It's just if you have never seen or heard or watched or did anything with the anime, you would just think that these are just obscene, random objects placed in the video game. While playing the game, you will very quickly realize that momentum will either be your friend or your worst enemy as you progress through these stages. It feels like there is no gravity in this game. So when you hit an enemy, or frenemy, whatever you want to call it, the enemy is stunned for a couple seconds, but if you don't hit it directly on top of it, if you hit it from the side, you are either going to get pushed forward or pushed backward. Now, when a frenemy is hit, or jumped on, Goomba stomped, whatever you want to call it, they're stunned for a couple seconds. When you are hit, you are also stunned for a couple seconds, and the timer does not stop when you get hit. The big problem with this is that you can get caught into like walls and floors where if you get pushed back, you can get pushed back into a wall or floor, which typically you can just walk out of. But if one of your frenemies is also on top of you because you both get pushed into the wall or floor, you have no invincibility frames, so therefore you're just going to be repeatedly stunned until the level is over. Luckily, the timer does tick down pretty damn fast. Collecting the boot power-up can also be a life or death thing as well, too. If you remember, the boot power-up actually increases your speed of Yonkaman, which a lot of times can be a blessing. But if you start to lose control of Yonkaman from jumping and from the moving platforms that are about, you can quickly snowball out of control with the boots and start running into every enemy on the screen, losing a ton of time, and the time is crucial come to the final stages. Once you have gotten to the end of the stage, you will face off against Osodashi in a game of Janken. In order to defeat Osodashi, you have to beat him in Janken 5 times. Now, it sounds easy, and it is easy, but there is a little caveat to that. So, you have 5 dots at the top of your screen. If you beat him in one game of Janken, your dot fills in. However, if you lose the next game of Janken, you lose your dot. So, the goal is to make all 5 dots solid. So, kind of, sort of, you have to win 5 games of Janken straight. There is a speedrun technique to this game. For the most part, there is no strategy behind it at all. And while you're playing Janken against Osodashi, the timer is still ticking down. And if you do run out of time while playing Janken against Osodashi, you lose. Sometimes you are just mashing the A button and choosing paper and hoping that it wins. Once you have saved all of your friends, so the 4 friends that you have available, the final stage unlocks, which is a final confrontation against Osodashi, claiming justice and rolling the credits. It is the same end fight. It's the same left to right stage. However, the 4th friend and the final stage, I wouldn't say they're hard, but they can cause some anxiety because you have a reduced amount of time to finish this stage, and there are way more frenemies in the way, and there are way more pairs in the way, meaning that you need to probably play through the stage a few times to like understand and memorize where these things are to dodge them all. Because you will reach Osodashi with not as much time as normal left on the clock. But again, the stages aren't hard. They can just be a little bit anxiety-inducing. So, like I said, once you beat Osodashi in stage 5, you will claim your justice after he has defeated everyone, and the credits will roll. Something with the game that is missing is the Janken stick and the Janken power, which is actually a pretty big deal in the anime. Without the Janken stick, Janken Man can't harness the power of the Janken and have a fight against Osodashi. So there was a bit of a missed opportunity with that piece of the game. And with the game being out in 1991, there is some excuse for it to being fairly simple, but there is no excuse for it to being super short. 1991, at least Japanese exclusives in a way, have proven that you can have a pretty lengthy Game Boy game even with the absolute most basic sprites. And speaking of sprites, the sprite work in this game, with the exception of the power-ups, the actual sprite work of Yonkaman, Osodashi, and Yonkaman's friends are absolutely phenomenal. They look very, very, very good for what they are. And you can very much make out what they are. If you've ever seen the anime before, you would know what character is what. The power-ups, however, are a bit too small for what they are. So sometimes they're very hard to make out. You can make out a boot because it's a distinct thing, same with the heart. But some of the fruit look very similar to one another. So you may accidentally pick up one and be like, oh shit, I lost time. Or you may think that the fist might look like something else, and you pick it up and you're like, well, okay, that wasn't a fist, it was a lemon. So the power-ups do kind of not look great, and they're a bit too small. The frenemies themselves, like I said, you wouldn't know they were background characters of the anime unless you actually saw the anime, or at least had a preview of the anime. They could have done a much, much better job with the frenemies. They could have actually made them humanoid-like, just like Yonkaman and Osodashi, or at least given them a bit more of a personality, because they also kind of look like power-ups in the game, too. They're kind of like the same size as your character in Quirk or Amazing Tater, which is fine for that game, but not fine for Janken, man. As for level layouts and everything else, again, the sprite work and the actual layouts, like the flooring, the skies, the background, all of the stuff looks incredible, especially for 1991. The sprite work itself is absolutely phenomenal, in my opinion. The audio, the music, can be a bit forgettable, but overall, it's not awful. I've heard much, much worse in later Game Boy games. The cover art. So the cover art very much mimics that of the anime. You have a very brilliant yellow border around the box, and in the center you have a sunburst of pink and white in the background, and then coming to the foreground, front and center, you have Yonkan Man flying in like Superman, and above him you have Yonkan Man with the rock, scissors, paper. And then below Yonkan Man, you have Osodashi. You have Osodashi in this like gray suit, like he does in the anime. And then you have Yonkan Man's 4 friends. And then obviously below that, in the yellow border, you have Masaya, which is the publisher of the video game. A little bit of trivia about Yonkan Man. Yonkan Man's name is actually Mark. There you go. Some general reception of Yonkaman. This game, for anyone that has played the game and watched the anime, it was actually very well received. There have been non-stop talks of dubbing the original anime to English, and as of 2021, that's right, the year that we are in right now, Yonkaman Adventures is a Japanese animated web series made to commemorate the release of Yonkaman's 30th anniversary. It was released on the official Ashi Productions channel on YouTube, April 4th of 2021, which is exactly 30 years on the dot from the first airing episode of Yonkaman. On July 2nd, 2021, the show made an English dub debut on Ashi Pro USA channel in the same site, so on YouTube. The web series is a revival reboot of the original Yonkaman series, which aired in TV Tokyo and Cartoon Network in Japan in the 90s. But it does use a different animation style. Yonkaman Adventures serves as a comedic spin-off with almost no continuity to the previous series. And its episodes are actually much shorter. They run at about 10 minutes instead of a half hour. The show focuses on the adventures of Yonkaman and his friends. Again, I'm not going to try and pronounce them. And his rival, Masuko Osodashi. However, the premise still remains. Yonkaman is still protecting Yonkan Village from threats. So with that, we're going to take another quick break. And when I come back, I will discuss my history with the game. I actually have some history with it. Not crazy history, but some history. So stay tuned. Alright, welcome back everybody. So, my thoughts and history of the game. So, I'll start with the thoughts of this game. So, I actually really enjoy this game. It's a very short game. I used to speedrun this game. It's around like a 7-minute speedrun, 6 to 7 minute speedrun. I think blind this game took me about 12 minutes. I actually really, really like this game. I've never played it up until Game Boy Adventure. And I never knew there was a game for Janken, man. So, before I got into Game Boy Adventure, or retro gaming again in general, I did watch a lot of anime, especially on Cartoon Network. And being a curious person that I am, I always went to YouTube to find like anime stuff because back when I was in college, there was no such thing as like subscription stuff, right? Crunchyroll might have existed, but it probably didn't. Like, Adult Swim was the closest thing in America that we were getting to anime, essentially. So I would always YouTube stuff because YouTube was the prime place to find all of this. And I remember coming across a lot of quirky Japanese animes because I remember I used to watch Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z all the time when I was a kid. I remember watching Fist of the North Star. Like, I remember watching some of these older animes. And when I was looking up some of the older animes in my quote-unquote recommended side of things, I got anime for Yonkan Man. And for the longest time, like, I never knew what it was because there's no English dub, there's no English closed captions, but I would still like put it on the background because it is kind of an entertaining anime just to watch. But I never like remembered the name. It was just one of those like I clicked it, let it run in the background for an hour because I maybe just listened to a couple episodes and just like went on with my life because it wasn't in English, so I couldn't invest in it. Then we fast forward to like 2018, 2017, something like that. And I'm going through like my my Game Boy log, and I found a game called Yonkan Man. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, well, let's see what this is about. And I popped it in the EverDrive and loaded it up. And the characters looked a little familiar, but I couldn't put my finger on where I've seen those characters before. And then we played the game, we beat it, and this and that, whatever. And I did a little bit of like research on it. I'm like, what the hell is Yonkan Man? And sure enough, when I Google searched it, I got YouTube videos for it. And sure enough, from there, I was like, oh, hey, I watched this like 10 years ago on YouTube and just didn't know what it was. I didn't even know it had games for this, type deal. I was like, okay, well, that's cool. It's called Yonka Man. All right. Yeah, I watched like 2 episodes of this 10 years ago and had no idea what it was about. So, that's kind of like my history with Yonka Man in general. It's just that one random night in college, I watched 2 episodes, and 10 years later, I ended up playing a video game based off of it. So, but yeah, no, I do like Yonka Man, the game. It's very short. It's quirky. It's pretty janky because you can clip through like floors and walls, but it is a pretty lovable game. With that, we do have a small little speedrun segment of this. Like I said, I did use to speedrun this game a little bit here and there. I'm not going to deep dive into like the quote-unquote strats or anything like that with Yonka Man. There really isn't much for strats, it's just dodging everything. But the world record holder for this is Atros with a time of 4 minutes and 17 seconds. This was achieved almost a year ago. I have a time of 6 minutes and 48 seconds, but I'm not last, so it's all that matters. So that's it for the little speedrunning section there. Before we take a quick break, let's dive into some community events and listener questions. Let's see if we got everything here. This is Game Boy. Alright, we got legs here. Pretty excited for it. Mo and Ariel, I see not appreciating Yonkaman at all. This will not be tolerated. And Mo will be suspended for 32 years. I don't know what he's suspended from yet, but he is suspended for 32 years for not liking Yonkaman. No questions, that's fine. But we do have community events coming up. So when this episode is released, I think, in a way, it doesn't matter. November 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern is Tiny 10 number 12, I think we're on. Yeah, Tiny 10 12, November 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern on Retro Gaming Live TV. So I believe this comes out then, so I will see you all over there. Or you're listening to this after you've watched the race because you can't get enough Game Boy. We have another thing coming out for our friends at Retro Gaming Live TV as well. We have a Feed the Kids Marathon of 2021, which is happening November 26th through November 28th. These submissions are obviously closed now. And I submitted 5 games for this marathon. So I submitted a max load to this marathon. I submitted Barbie Game Girl, Squidlet, Kirby Streamland Extra Mode, Trip World, and I can't remember the 5th game. Looking it up. Sailor Moon R. Arcade Easy Mode. I knew it was another Barbie game styled game. So those are the 5 games I submitted to the Feed the Children Marathon from Retro Gaming Live TV. We also have another marathon coming up with Retro Gaming Live TV. Not Game Boy centric, but it is a DOS-cathlon. More specifically, the DOS-cathlon 4. So this is multiple MS-DOS games in a similar format of that of the Tiny 10. This race date is to be determined. Some other stuff we got going on. We got Power Up with Pride. That's right. We got a Power Up with Pride Winter Edition coming up here. Starting on... I swear to God, I had this stuff open once upon a time, I promise. Starting on December 3rd at 11 a.m. Central, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Kicking it off at Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Super Nintendo. But for the Game Boy, we have Barbie Fashion Pack games. It's a Game Boy Color game, but you know what? It's a Barbie game, so we gotta give it some love. We have Tetris Blast on Sunday, December 5th. And we do have some Game Boy Advance games. Metroid Freeze Flame, Zero Mission, and Fusion. And there is a locked game, I don't know what that means, of Kirby Streamland as well on Sunday. So there is a lot going on for that. Definitely give it a check out. Give them some love. They support a very good cause, and I think I'm friends with most of the people from Power Up or Pride. There might be a couple new people part of the organization that I don't know, but I think I'm friends with everyone, if not most of them. On top of that, Midwest Speed Fest right now is actually just announcing their schedule for their event coming up as well too. So probably the next podcast episode, I will give them a shout out into the marathon section. With that is, and we have AGDQ coming up, but we who cares? So with that, there's only one Game Boy game in AGDQ, and it's Ultraman Ball, which I'm cool with, and Gygus Blues is running it, which I'm even more cool with, because Gygus is my roommate for Summer Games Done Quick, and I love Gygus to death, but it's one Game Boy game, and it's Ultraman Ball. It's not like they're not getting Game Boy game submissions. I look at the submission list, and there are a ton of Game Boy games that get submitted. And the fact that they can just pick Ultraman Ball out of like that bucket is something else. So with that, we're going to take one more quick short break, and we are going to close out this sucker, so stay tuned. Alright, welcome back everybody. So, the best scripted outro that you'll ever hear in your life. If you ever have any thoughts, suggestions, feedback, anything at all, please let us know in Discord, whether it's a DM or in the actual like Discord server. You can talk to us on Twitch, you can DM us on Twitch. There's Twitter, you can DM us on Twitter. I think you can DM most of us on Twitter. Just let us know. Just talk to us. We're obviously, doing it for us because we have a genuine interest in Game Boy, but we also wanted to make it entertaining for you all to listen to because you all are investing in the podcast one way or another. So please let us know how we're doing. If there's anything we can do to change, we'd love to hear from you. You can find me, eBloodyCandy, on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. You can find my awesome co-host, Moelle, Moelleuh, at Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and he does have an Instagram now. Go give him follows. And then you can find our wonderful, wonderful, uber-duber, awesome producer, SprintingLegs, at SprintingLegs on Twitch and Twitter, and obviously in Discord, and Legs on YouTube. And make sure to go check out her project website, www.sprintinglegs.com. With all of that, we also have a Patreon. So if you would like to support the podcast monetarily, we do have a Patreon where we have various different tiers of stuff. Most set up the Patreon, I'm just the mouth for it, alright? So, we have tiers of things that offer you other things, and once we get to $20 a month in patrons, Mo and I will start live streaming the main episodes for the podcast. Patrons are also getting special exclusive sneak peek premieres of every Haunt Hunter thing that comes out. So right now, the premiere sneak peek exclusive that patrons are getting right now is my playthrough of Yamawari Night Alone. If you're not into Patreon because of subscriptions and stuff like that, because everything in the world is subscription based, you make one, you forget about it, you're like, hey, why is my bank account like negative $15? Oh, I had a Netflix account, or I had a Disney Plus account. Subscriptions are everywhere, and people forget about them. If subscription stuff isn't your thing, we do have a PayPal. The problem with PayPal is that we can't tie Discord into PayPal, so it's really hard to give out rewards and thank yous with that. So if you do support the podcast via PayPal, please let Moelle, myself, or SprintingLegs know so we can thank you for your generosity. We have a merch store. We're going to keep selling out here for a little bit until we get to, like, the humble part. We have a merch store now. We just opened up the merch store, I think, in June or July. Go ahead and grab yourself a shirt. They're pretty nice. I own a couple of them. The shirts aren't some, like, generic unknown brand. The two that I have are Hanes, like, those, like, Hanes, like, Tough Work t-shirts. They're actually pretty damn good, and they haven't shrunk yet, and I've washed them like 4 times, so and the print hasn't faded. They're not bad. They're pretty good. Go ahead and grab yourself a t-shirt, and if you're into drinking coffee like I am, we have a coffee mug as well too, and I'm pretty big on coffee mugs, let me tell you what. And all of that revenue from the merch shop goes right back into the podcast. None of it is pocketed at all. It goes towards paying our subscriptions and our fees and upgrading equipment, paying for things that we typically have to pay for from out of pocket. So everything that we get from Patreon, PayPal, and the merch store goes 100% back into the podcast. Now, for the humble piece of things, we understand money is not everything. Money is just, some people just don't have it, right? Or it's tight for a lot of people, especially now in the way the world is right now. We're still in a pandemic. The economy and the job market is, who knows what the hell is going to go on with it for the next couple months or the next couple years even. We have no idea. But you know what? That's perfectly fine. You listening to the podcast, whether it's on your drive to work or on your run or sleeping in your bed or while playing Game Boy at your computer desk while listening to This Is Game Boy on your computer, does not matter at all. You listening to the podcast is some of the biggest support that you can give to our podcast in general. The more listens we get, the higher up we're going to rank. The more listens we get, the more support we're going to get just from you guys, and the better Mo and I are going to feel about doing this project. This is very much a passion project for the three of us. You coming into our Discord and just hanging out, having conversations with us, just chatting with us, BSing with us is also nice support to have too. We love meeting new people. We love meeting fans of Game Boy, fans of the podcast. We just love being around people that have a genuine interest in what we have a genuine interest in as well too. So all of that support is free, doesn't cost a thing, and honestly sometimes it weighs as much as a monetary support. So thank you all for listening to the podcast. Thank you for those of you that are in the Discord and converse with us and hang out with us and talk dumb with us when it comes to Game Boy. Alright, no more sappy stuff. I'm signing off for this episode. The next time you hear from me again, I'll be with Mo, and we're going to talk about Fortified Zone 1 and 2. Have a fantastic rest of your day, week, weekend, night, whatever it is you are in the world, and we will talk to you soon. Game Boy collecting Game Boy. This is Game Boy, a Game Boy podcast. You get where I'm going with this.